So in the last video, we showed you how to install the CSM observability module, but we showed you that without persistent volumes, that all the data can be deleted. If I delete a pod, for example, obviously not something we want to have happen if we're trying to keep performance data for a long time. So I'm going to show you in this video how to make persistent volumes for both Prometheus and Grafana. So with Prometheus, basically what we're going to do is merge our values documents that we have on our GitHub site with the values document that is on the Prometheus GitHub site. So this is the Prometheus values.yaml file. And like I said, we're just going to merge the two. So anywhere where we have an updated value, we will change this document to reflect that. So for example, the alert manager enabled is false. So we want to change it in this document to be that way as well. So from a persistent volume standpoint, there is a section on persistent volumes. So we're basically going to edit this so it reflects the persistent volumes that we're going to create so that we keep the data along permanently. I believe we'll create 1 gig, 1 8 gig, and 2 2 gig volumes. So these are the 3 persistent volume claims that we have. So you can see, right, there's a 2 gig volume, another 2 gig volume, and 8 gig volume coming from a single power store. So there's the alert manager that we changed to false. Not going to go through every line, but again, you get the idea that we're just merging the two. So after that, a couple other things that we did was some tweaks to the version. So there's a specific version that we want of Prometheus. We want to change the service type from cluster IP to node port. And we basically have to edit the extra strips config section to basically tell it to capture data from the OTel, which was part of the installer that we did last time. So you can see that I just edited this section to match our values chart. And then from a persistent volume standpoint, again, I just created this section here, and you can see that we've got multiple persistent volume claims, right? So for each one of the 3, I just edited the existing claim and just entered in one of the PVC names that I showed you earlier. So here you can see that it's blank, right? The existing claims is the existing one, and that's what was changed. So once we do that, we'll create the persistent volumes. You can see on the power store, right? You can see the 3 that I created. There's the 8, the 2, and the 2 gig volumes. So now we'll go ahead and install it using the Helm chart, but you can see the persistent volumes here. We'll show you the claims first. So you can see everything is bound. So that's the command to execute the installer. You point it to the values document that we showed you, the values.yaml file. And then once this completes, you can do a get pods, and you'll see the new Prometheus pods there at the bottom. So now you can see that we've got this Grafana instance, right? If you go to the data sources, you'll see that it is pointing to our Prometheus pods that we created. And you can see some IO flowing, right? We've got some data in the Helm chart. So now what we're going to do to show that this works is we're going to go ahead and delete the Prometheus server pod. And then once it comes back, which it'll do by itself, you'll see that the data still exists in Grafana, which before, when we did not have persistent volumes, was not the case, right? All the data went away. So the pod deleted, it restarts itself. Go to the services for that, you can see the port number hasn't changed, right? It's still the same port, so we don't have to update anything in Grafana. But you can see here, right, the data is still there, right? I didn't lose my data. So that is Prometheus. Now we're going to switch over to the Grafana side. Same concept. So just like we did in Prometheus here, where we replaced the values, we're going to do the same thing with Grafana. So we'll go to the section on Grafana, and you can see all the values that we have to change here. So the first thing we do is change the tag, right? So there's a specific version of Grafana that we qualified and tested. So we want to make sure we have that version. We want to change to node port from the cluster IP service that's there today. So that's something that will change. The default login, right? So that one is not the same. So we'll change that as well. I will post all the final files that I have on a Git page, so you can just copy it instead of having to manually edit everything. But the plugins, right? I updated the plugins section with what plugins we need, and then the data sources. So there's a small tweak in this that I will show you, but outside of that, a couple other parameters that we want to change here. We want to set this to false. A couple sidecars that are set to true that we're going to change to false as well. Data sources. So sorry, we're going to change it to true from false. Dashboard. And then extra config mounts that I don't think we had to change that. Yeah, it's there already. So I'll show you the final document after all the edits. You can see things like the version change that we made, right? That's there. Changing the service type from cluster IP to node port. So we made that change. Commented out the port config from the previous section. And they did have a section in persistence in the original document. So again, I just updated that to what our PVC name was. So I had a PVC called PVC Grafana Persistence. So I just edited that section. The login that I showed you before, we're going to change that to admin or whatever you choose. You will change it after your first login. The plugins that I showed you before, so we edited in that section. The data sources, so the only difference between the document and this is I set the URL to blank. What I noticed is if you don't set it to blank, when you restart the container, it resets it to whatever values in this document when you go and specify the data sources. So I left those blank, and if I did that, any changes I made seem to stay. So I created installed the Helm via the Helm chart, just like we did with Prometheus. You can see the pod that it created, everything's running. So I logged in and I rebooted the container. And you can see that it went down. It will eventually come back up. And once it does, you can see that, hey, the values that I put in there are still there, right? So it didn't reset to a default value like you saw in the previous video. So now we don't have to change anything if we have any reboots or anything like that. So you can see the persistent volume that I created, again, similar to what we did in Prometheus. So that shouldn't be any big surprise. So hopefully that answers the question on how we keep the data around once we have things like reboots or pod deletions, right? We want to keep that data around. So thanks, and hope this helps. Bye.